Hey guys, today I'll be summarizing the climate change content required by the IB biology curriculum. This summary is both for HL and SL students. So first, we'll start by defining what are global warming and climate change. Global warming is an increase in temperature of the atmosphere or oceans or Earth. Climate change is the changes in amount of precipitation or greater ranges in temperature. So, how is it? Why would there be global warming, and how does it lead to climate change? Climate change is caused by the excessive release of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Currently, we have different industries, especially secondary industry, that releases a lot of the greenhouse gases, including methane, CO2, H2O into the atmosphere. And this excess amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere could lead to enhanced greenhouse effect. Notice that I am saying enhanced instead of just the greenhouse effect, because the Earth originally have greenhouse effect. It's just that where the people are enhancing it. Moving on to the example, I want to use Arctic ecosystem as an example of how global warming may affect the wildlife on Earth. So first, melting ice can lead to rising of sea level, which lead to loss of habitat. For example, the Arctic fox may lose their habitat for their either food or accommodation. And then there is also changes in salinity, and there is also changes in ocean currents, which change the distribution of nutrients. There could be changes in predator-prey relationships due to ecosystem disruptions. And there could be increased success of pest species, which simply means that pest species can move from areas of higher temperature to areas of lower temperature because of the global warming. And temperate species with bigger range of habitats as the ice melts could, because why do they have bigger habitat? It's simply because they can move, like the pets, they can move from areas of lower latitude to areas of higher latitude. And there is also increased rate of decomposition of detritus. And moving on to mechanism, we have the mechanism is pretty easy. If you study IB geography, I think you're free to skip this part. Basically, the solar radiation in terms of shortwave radiation reaches the Earth. Some are reflected while others are passes through the atmosphere, converted to long-wave radiation by Earth. The long-wave radiation is then absorbed by greenhouse gases like CO2, and the heat are trapped in Earth. Alright, moving on to anthropogenic causes of climate change. What are the causes of climate change? So, combustion of fossil fuels is one, deforestation is another one, forest fire, excessive cattle ranching, these can all cause climate change. Moving on to the positive feedback loops, we have two that is required by IB biology. So the first thing is the thawing of permafrost. Global warming causes the permafrost in polar areas to thaw, As the soils thaw, the carbon that is stored in those soil or the layers below the soil, the permafrost, to be released into the atmosphere. These gases, when they're released, are released in the form of methane or CO2, which are greenhouse gases, causing the temperature to increase even further and thawing the permafrost even more. So you can see a loop of acceleration, of exacerbation and acceleration of the process. And the second thing is polar ice melt. Global warming causes the polar ice to melt. Compared to the ice or the snow that is covering the polar area, ocean, if it's exposed as the ice melt, would have a much lower albedo because they're darker in color. And this would lead to the ocean trapping more heat as the shortwave radiation reaches the earth, and thus the temperature would increase even more, and this process of global warming and melting of ice can exacerbate. And then we have some examples of the impacts of climate change. So the change from net carbon accumulation to net loss in boreal forest is one example of the impact of climate change. This can also be an example of the tipping point, which means that once the ecosystem reaches the tipping point and go beyond that, its equilibrium can lower or be destroyed completely, just because that it doesn't have the ability to restabilize itself into the original state. So any changes inputted into that system can result in an exaggerate or very extreme output. Another example would be the land-fast ice in Antarctica and sea ice in Arctic melting lead to polar habitat change. The change in ocean currents altering the timing and extent of nutrient upwelling, the poleward and upslope range shifts of temperate species, such as mountain bird species in New Guinea, they have upslope shifts. There are also threats to coral reefs as an example of potential ecosystem collapse. The reason of coral bleaching is caused by the loss of its symbiotic algae. We can go a little bit further to expand on the adaptation or mitigation strategy. We have rewilding, which involves the encouraging the growth of native species and so restoring naturally occurring ecosystems. But the downside is that it sequesters the carbon relatively slowly, but you can make sure that it's more beneficial for biodiversity. Another strategy would be to plant non-native trees, which are alien trees. These trees grow rapidly and can sequester the maximum mass of carbon in the shortest time, but as you expect, they can lower biodiversity significantly. Scientists don't usually agree on which one is the better approach.